You're listening to Ecto Portal, a journey into the unknown with Anthony Anderson and Verna Wilson.
I hope that you are seated comfortably, with the light turned down and the curtains drawn.
Hello, once again, to another journey into the unexplored, the unexplained Ecto Portal. I'm Anthony Anderson, your host, and I'm here with my co-host,
Verna Wilson. And remember, if it comes from Ecto Portal, it's true.
Of course, everything you hear on our show is absolutely true.
Absolutely. Just like when you go to the mirror and you read the ghost stories, it's true.
Everything's true. Don't even question it. Just accept it as real, because it's amazing.
It's amazing. And
I think Verna's foreshadowing, but that's okay.
They put themselves out there, so it must be true.
Yes. So what is this, just as a summary, what's going to be on this week's show, Verna?
It's going to be about first ladies who believed in psychic phenomena and who actually had psychic experiences. And we did we actually did another episode about presidents who consulted psychics, but this one deals with first ladies.
I bet you there was more first ladies that saw.
There was
psychics.
a lot of first ladies.
Yep. All right.
Yeah.
So I don't know any first ladies, but how about we go to the paranormal news?
Yeah, let's go to the paranormal news.
All right. All right. Verna's got quite a whopper. I mean, an absolute 900% truthful story.
Whopper? Where are we? Burger King?
No. You have a great story, right?
Yeah. This is from the Mirror.
Oh.
And don't make me laugh. We know it's a great story, okay? And like we said,
It's 100% true.
it must be. I'm sorry, everybody. Okay. Her name is Burkhard.
What?
And Burkhardi. Burkhardi is her name.
Her name is Bacardi?
Yeah,
like
here she is. Yeah, and I like her.
She a
Actually,
bartender?
I like her outfit.
Is she a bartender named Bacardi?
I don't know. Burkhardi. Well, it's spelled Borcarde. And I'm not trying to make fun. If you're listening, Burkhard, I'm not trying to make fun of you. I just don't know how to pronounce your name that well. But anyway, she said that her ghostly ex-husband is now stalking her in weird disguises.
Wait.
She says
That's a lot to unpack right there.
She married a ghost. He was her husband, and she divorced him. Now he's stalking her, and he's disguising himself.
That's even more to unpack than I thought. Because not only did she find a ghost, she married a ghost.
And she divorced him, too.
She divorced the
Yeah,
ghost.
she
The
divorced
ghost
him.
is stalking her, and now it's wearing disguises?
Mm-hmm. She said that she caught him stalking her in Paris when he claimed to be a dead Frenchman, and he followed her home, and she now wants to date only living men. So she divorced her ghost lover. She claims that he's stalking her after their breakup, and she's actually a singer-songwriter and named Brocard. And I actually want to. I want to hear her stuff actually.
I think we learned a lot.
Well, no, I want to hear her music. She's
Okay.
a singer-songwriter.
Okay.
So she fell in love with Eduardo. He was the ghost of a Victorian soldier in late 2021 when he appeared in her home. So she fell in love
I'm
with
sure we've talked about it at some point.
No, that was another person.
Are you sure we didn't cover this?
No, that was another
God,
one.
it's an exclusive.
There's been more than one person who's
Oh,
married.
trust me, I know.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, a year after, she said they got married, and she called it quits on their relationship and accused the spirit of cheating on her.
How would you know that?
I have no idea.
I'm sorry, questions.
She can come on the show. I'll be nice and respectful. I'd like to ask because I am generally curious. Yeah. But she called in an exorcist, and she was convinced that he was gone, so she treated herself to a trip to France, where she says she met another ghost named Fabian near the Eiffel Tower. And when it followed her home, she became suspicious, and her worst fears were later confirmed that it was Eduardo in disguise. So
let me get this straight.
Stop.
This Victorian ghost named Eduardo was in France following her and disguising himself as Fabian.
Fabian near the Eiffel Tower when she met Fabian, yeah. And she said when she found out it wasn't Fabian, it was actually Eduardo disguising himself. Mm-hmm.
All I picture is like a Groucho Marx glasses and mustache. But I knew, Fabian probably wouldn't wear that. You wouldn't see it, I guess.
I mean...
How do you know?
How do you know? Well, anyway, she says she thought she started a new... She said, I thought I started a new ghost-free chapter in my life, but it wasn't until I started to think about moving on that disturbing and creepy things started to happen. I embarked on a post-divorce trip to Paris to find myself, and I ended up finding Fabian, or so he called himself. I was walking down the banks of the river, chasing the shadow of the Eiffel Tower, cowering under my umbrella as raindrops poured off of it, and then it struck me, glistening in a puddle, the reflection of a French man. I tilted my umbrella back, but nobody was around. I looked back towards the puddle. The man was as clear as the ocean. So anyway, she started a holiday romance with a Parisian ghost, and she thought it was too good to be true, and he later revealed it was Eduardo. And she said it was a honey trap all along. I can't believe I've been catfished by a ghost.
Okay, I have one question for that.
Sure.
Why was she chasing the shadows of the Eiffel Tower?
I don't know.
And if it was raining, where are the shadows coming from? There's no sunlight.
She said from the puddle, like you can see the reflection of the puddle.
I know, but she said shadows of the Eiffel Tower. If it's not sunny out, what's casting a shadow?
I don't know.
Maybe it's Eduardo or Fabian.
Well, maybe the sun came out, and you know how sometimes it rains, the sun comes out in spots? Okay. And maybe, I don't know.
And that's where you see, like, dead French guys in the puddle?
I guess so. But she says she returned home from a date with a bunch of flowers, and Eduardo thought it would be amusing to pull all the heads off of all the roses and scatter the petals on her bed. And he even learned to play Careless Whisper on the saxophone. And she's
wait, he has a saxophone?
Yeah. And he played the song Careless Whisper.
She needs to be on our show.
And she said, I know she does. I want her on here. And I'll be nice and I'll be respectful. I won't go hee hee hee.
She's in the UK. She's like 10 hours ahead.
So. We can have people from the UK on the show. I'd like that, actually.
Well, time difference though.
Well, I know, but we can figure it out.
Yep.
But she said, at least I think it's him. The sound echoes in the distance sometimes when I'm taking a bath in candlelight. She said he's getting really jealous of the fact that I want to date a modern man. He knows I no longer find his uniform attractive, so he's going to extreme lengths to pull me in. He's even given himself a modern makeover and presented himself as a Ken doll. She said I thought I was going crazy.
Wait a minute.
A
was
Ken
someone
doll.
high when they wrote this article for the Daily Mirror?
She said I thought I was going crazy when the image of him with the cropped blonde hair and a pink suit appeared. I can tell it was him. Though as his gaunt, harrowed eyes locked into mine, slowly he merged back into a rugged Victorian soldier. And a medium told me that Eduardo would always be with me, and that's a thought I can't come to terms with.
Is she on medication?
I don't know. She said, I feel now I'm not consenting of Eduardo's presence, and I'm having trouble getting him to disconnect from me. Moving forward, I feel like I need a bit of flesh on my bones. Skeletons and dead men may seem hot, but in reality, they're stone cold, unpredictable, and scary.
Okay, I gotta say, any girl that has to have an exorcism to end the relationship, what does that say? What's that gonna say for the human that if they
calling
break up?
Skeletons and all that hot at one point, and now it's scary.
He's dressing up like Ken?
He was dressing up like Ken with blonde hair and a pink suit.
All right, I think the woman who married the pirate looks a little more grounded now.
A little more.
Just saying.
How would he know about Ken? Is he into pop culture?
Like I said, I have so many questions, and there's no answers for us.
Well, anyway, if any, I actually respectfully would like to have her on the show to talk about it. I'm always willing to hear somebody else's side
in
of
order
things.
to do that, we'd have to erase this.
Probably, yeah. Okay.
All right. Anyway, so I have an article, and it's not from the Daily Mirror.
Oh, well then.
Mine is from the BBC.
Oh, well. Okay. Does that mean it's true?
Of course it is. It's the BBC.
It's the BBC. All right.
It's not 300% true like the Daily Mirror. It's like 100% true.
Okay, 100%. All right.
All right. So they found a mysterious medieval cemetery unearthed in Wales.
Oh, well, that sounds interesting.
A rare medieval cemetery. They found it in Wales. It left archaeologists scratching their heads, though. They thought it might date to the 6th or 7th century, and 18 of the estimated 70 graves have been excavated so far. Some were preserved skeletons, found lying in unusual positions. Unexpected artifacts are also emerging. It revealed more about the ancient community, but it's raising questions. The cemetery lies in an unremarkable field in the grounds of Fonmon Castle, close to the end of the runway at Cardiff Airport.
Huh.
Over 2 summers, the team has been carefully removing the thin layer of the topsoil to expose the graves that were carved into bedrock a long time ago.
That doesn't surprise me. They
find them in the weirdest places.
They really do.
But it's an
doesn't
airport.
surprise
It was
me.
probably a giant field, so they probably had a community.
Yeah.
Summer Courts and the University of Reading says the skeletons are in good condition and they're about 1,500 years old. She says she points to a skull that's been excavated and has clues about how the people lived and worked. We have teeth that are very worn in kind of a weird way. They might indicate the use of the teeth as tools, maybe for textile work, leather work, or basketry. They're pulling something through their front teeth. Some of the skeletons are posing a puzzle. They're lying in a whole variety of positions. Some are flat on their backs, normal for the period. Others are placed on their sides, and a few are buried in a crouching position with the knees tucked up against their chests.
I wonder if disease struck the place or it was a battlefield.
Hard to say.
Yeah.
The archaeologists aren't sure what it means, but the cemetery used over a long period of time, used for so long, maybe the practice has changed. Or were some people marked as being different? Items found around the graves were dishes, parts of dishes, cups, splinters of animal bone, both butchered and burnt. One really brings community to life. It's a tiny carved peg that many have been used as a marker for scoring in a game, and perhaps something like this was used in a cribbage board. It's very tiny.
That's interesting.
This guy and this team said it's unlike any cemetery they've really seen because it has so many different things in it. Places for communities, burying their dead, other forms of activity, eating, drinking, feasting. They just said they found a piece of glass, so they just don't know what else they're going to find. There's so many. Maybe it's just a cemetery that's been a cemetery for so long.
Yeah.
That's why they're finding so many different things, different layers.
Right. And there was a lot of village life. People did different things. They left different things.
Yeah. You're buried with different things.
Buried with different things, yeah.
So there you go. Nothing really paranormal, but sometimes we like to talk about these medieval cemeteries. And
well, that's because this show deals with with lots of things about the spirit. Mm-hmm. So we talk about life and death, and I think it goes with the theme.
Yep,
everything.
I think so too. All right, that's the paranormal news. All right, so tell us more about these first ladies that are seeking psychics, Verna.
Well, the thing that I found interesting about the first ladies is that they were much more open about believing in psychics and also about the spiritual presence of ghosts around the White House, and that some of them openly admitted to consulting astrologers and psychics at the time, and they felt that it was part of their job to actually do that, to watch over their husbands and their families.
I was going to say, was this more for them, or was this for them and their husbands and the country, I guess?
I think in the beginning, for some of them, it was for them, and only their families knew about
personal reasons.
But when they became a first lady, they felt it was part of their duty to bring that more into their lives so that they can protect their husbands' interests and protect their families, because they were more public figures as that time went on. And the first one that we're going to talk about is Julia Tyler. And she was the first presidential wife who was able to get her photo taken, in addition to...
Who was her president husband?
Her president husband was John Tyler.
Okay.
He was the 10th president of the United States.
Oh.
And she was interested in the occult and reading horoscopes, but she also believed that she had full-blown psychic powers.
What time period what year?
This was back in the 1800s, around, I don't mean to not be
I'm just
clueless.
saying it gives us a better picture
around
of the time.
1862 or something like that.
So before the Victorian spiritualist era.
Right, and a little bit before 1862, around the middle 1800s.
Okay.
But she actually he had a first wife before her, and his first wife passed away, and he actually married very quickly. And he was friends with her family. They were a well-off family, the Gardner family, and they were from Long Island, New York. Uh-huh. And she was 22 when he met her. He met her with the intention of possibly courting his son. So he had her in mind for his son, John Tyler Jr. And apparently John Tyler Jr. was still married, and he was in the process of a divorce. So he was looking for another wife at the time.
Isn't that weird, though? Your dad's out look shopping for a wife for you, and you're not even done with the first one?
I know. That is a weird one.
Times have changed, folks.
They really have. So this was back in 1844, and a lot of people were gathered to see the christening of a ship called the USS Princeton. And there was a huge explosion when they saw that ship, and it killed Julia's father, which is very sad. Her father's name was David. So President Tyler, of course, he comforted her, and she ended up falling in love with him instead of his son. So it was just 5 months after his first wife's death, and he eloped with her, marrying her in a private ceremony. And of course...
Wait, she married the son, though, not dad, right?
No, she married him.
She married the dad.
She married the dad instead of his son.
That's
in
right.
a private ceremony. They eloped together. It was,
wow.
Yeah. And the press, of course, made a big deal out of it, about him marrying a woman who was 30 years younger than him. So anyway, he married a woman who was very much into the psychic arts.
Yeah.
And she claimed to have extrasensory perception. And she could also,
she was really into it.
Yeah, and she could also levitate and summon ghosts at will.
The first lady who could levitate.
Levitate,
folks.
yeah.
Wow.
And she used to have a party where she invited mediums, and they performed their tricks, including making the table levitate.
Was this the White House?
Well, I think it was at the White House, and also
probably the one that burned down first, and they rebuilt the White House. Remember?
Oh yeah.
Probably the first one.
And her sister actually supported her, and she believed in her powers. Wow. And she wrote to their mother saying that she was not afraid, but rather in awe of the things that her sister could do. So she had support from her family. So
they must have believed her then, if they were in awe.
They were in awe, and they believed her. Now, in 1862, she had a vision of the future, that her husband was choking and dying, and she. After she had that vision, she rushed to him, but he told her he was fine and nothing to worry about, but it still worried her. So she told everyone about her vision, so that, as a warning. And then 2 days later, it actually came true, and he died exactly as she envisioned it.
That must be horrible for her. A, he dies, so she has to deal with that. And then B, she saw it before it happened.
I can imagine how awful that was.
It's almost like reliving it.
Yeah, that must have been awful.
And then she couldn't stop it. Obviously.
And of course, she probably thought, "I wish he'd have listened to me."
Yeah, so she probably feels guilt because she couldn't stop it from happening.
Yeah.
Ugh. What a horrible situation to be in.
Now, the next one was Jane Pierce, who was the first lady of the President Franklin Pierce. Okay. And he became president in 1853. Okay. And he was on board a train with his wife, Jane Pierce, and they had an 11-year-old son whose name was Benny. And the train apparently got into an accident and fell off the tracks. Oh, no. And, of course, poor Benny died. And in the celebration of Franklin becoming president was overshadowed by the loss of their son. So
talk about a downer on the situation.
Yeah, exactly. So to make things worse, they lost another child years before, And of course, she wore black to let everybody know that she was in mourning.
Yeah.
So they had a lot of customs for mourning back then, and she wore black. And of course, I can imagine how grieved she was losing her children.
Yeah.
So she became, actually, she was grieving, and she became obsessed with trying to contact her son Benny. So the first thing she did was write a letter to her dead son, explaining how guilty she felt and how awful she felt, like an awful mother. But she eventually invited the Fox sisters into the White House to conduct a seance.
Which we've done a show on the Fox sisters.
We did a show on the Fox sisters, right. So she was hoping that they could contact Benny. So after the seance, she wrote a letter to her sister explaining that she had vivid dreams where the ghost of Benny came to speak to her. And she felt better. She felt like she had some closure. And finally, she forgave herself for his death. And she understood that there was nothing that she could have done, that it wasn't her fault. And of course, she felt that the dream helped her and that she got some closure there. So that's
interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder what the Fox sisters did for her, though.
Well, apparently,
Doesn't really say.
It doesn't really say that they.
Because remember, we when we did the show on the Fox sisters, we found some instances where they did help people,
right,
and other instances where they were kind of charlatanist too.
You know, I don't think that they ever show that they actually got in touch, but I think the fact that they were trying and that they were reputable probably helped her.
It does say that they went to the White House, though, right?
It did.
Okay.
Yeah, she did invite them to the White House. Yeah,
maybe they didn't have any results, and she just had this dream afterwards anyway.
She had the dream afterwards, and I'm not surprised she had the dream, because if you are trying to call somebody in spirit and you're doing a full seance and you don't get any results, maybe he came to her privately because she picked up on him.
Well, I'm sure he's on her mind the whole time too. So.
Well, that's true, but if you are calling somebody and they're close to you and they decide they don't want to come at that time, you can pick up on them and have a dream about them because you're picking up on their energy, on their spirit.
We both know spirits they obviously can read your mind. They can
absolutely
whatever your inner thoughts are.
Right.
They can pick up on it.
Yep.
They can relay. They understand.
And I'm glad she had that dream about him, because it comforted her as a mother.
Yeah, that's interesting, though.
So now we're going to come to Mary Todd Lincoln, and she's very famous for being a spiritualist.
Oh,
I think
she was a big-time spiritualist.
I think everybody I think she's actually the most famous.
She didn't give a damn what other people thought about it.
No, she didn't care. Now, she lost 2 sons, Willie and Eddie, and she, of course, mourned her sons. And in fact, I heard actually she was clinically depressed, Mary Todd.
Yeah, I know she had issues. I think she had clinical depression anyway. They didn't know what it was, obviously, too much.
Not back then, but
melancholy, I believe they called it.
She was very melancholy back then, yeah. So she actually had a dream about her husband being assassinated, and she claimed that Willie stood at the edge of the bed every night smiling at her, and she said that she would often see her other son, Eddie, there as well. And I believe that, because when my father died when I was 10, he stood at the edge of my bed watching me for the next 6 months. Yeah. I used to come to my mother.
Now, I have to ask you this, just to break away for a second.
Of course.
When it happens, he's at the edge of your bed in your dream, or is it
I saw him.
You wake up and he's standing there?
I woke up and he's standing there.
Did you ever say anything?
I just would wake up and look at him. I didn't.
So you knew it wouldn't matter to say anything. Maybe you just knew that.
I was 10 years old. I was grieving a lot, and I would see him.
It was like a comforting
It was
sight.
comforting. And then I would get up and run to my mother. I would actually wake her up while she was sleeping, say, "Mommy, I see Daddy."
You know what? The reason I asked if you said anything, because I think this is part of what a spirit can do, is when they appear to you, they also can telepathically talk to you, comfort you, so you didn't even probably have the need to have to say anything.
I didn't, and he never said a
word. You knew it was
word.
comforting.
I saw him, and he never said a word.
But you knew it was comforting.
It was very comforting.
So this is what I mean. You're communicating, but nobody's talking.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I just think that's interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't want to...
Oh, no, that's great. That's fine. So she began to also invite mediums to the White House and to conduct what she calls calls to the dead.
Interesting.
And it took place in the Red Room. And Abe actually supported her, and he attended the seances with her, but he actually didn't believe it. He just did it to comfort her.
Isn't that interesting? What a good husband.
I know.
Rather than say, I'm going to go have a brandy, I don't want any part of this. He's like, no, I'll be here.
I think he might have done it out of curiosity too.
Yeah, I think so too.
So there was one medium that was actually somebody who she relied on, who was very successful. Her name was Cranston Laurie, and she believed that Cranston was in contact with her two dead sons. And Laurie actually predicted that Lincoln had enemies in his cabinet who was going to betray him. Uh-oh. And of course, Lincoln, didn't like hearing that.
Yeah.
And he actually, Abe himself was very clairvoyant. He had a dream where he saw his own funeral, and he envisioned sailing somewhere, although he wasn't sure where. And actually, I remember reading about this. Lincoln said he had a dream where he saw his own funeral, and he asked who died, and they said a voice answered him and said the president.
I do remember reading about that, Lincoln's dream. I do.
Yeah. So anyway, after this happened, of course, he did get assassinated, and sadly, Mary witnessed it, and it was horrible. And she actually began to be more depressed, and she actually tried to bring in more spiritualist contacts with her. Yeah. So I think she paid a photographer, William Mumler, to take a picture with Lincoln's ghost, who they said was Lincoln's ghost.
That's a famous picture. That's a very
famous picture. And she joined a spiritualist commune and lived among people who were spiritualists on a regular basis. I wonder if she even went to Lily Dale.
I'm sure. Well,
because that was a spiritualist commune back then.
Weren't the Fox sisters were in Lilydale for a while too?
Yeah,
right?
I want to go to Lilydale.
I know I'd like to go there myself.
Yeah. So anyway, a lot of people claim that they saw visions of Abraham Lincoln's ghost roaming the halls, including First Lady Grace Coolidge and Prime Minister Winston Churchill and Queen Wilhelmina from the Netherlands. When she was visiting the White House in 1942, she heard a knock on the door around midnight, and when she opened the door, Lincoln's ghost was standing there, and she fainted.
Oh my God!
And Lincoln's ghost, it's been sighted in the place for years. So
he's still pretty much around.
And there's another story that I heard that Barack Obama used to sit in front of Lincoln's portrait and actually ask him for guidance on what he should do, because he saw Lincoln as an inspiration. I think that was kind of neat.
Yeah, I could see that. Absolutely. Someone who actually cares about the country and is looking for guidance and inspiration anywhere.
Yeah, I think I think that's pretty cool. So the next one is Edith Wilson, and she was married to President Woodrow Wilson.
Woodrow, yep.
Yeah. So she actually...
What year was that one?
Let's see, that was Woodrow Wilson, probably the early 1900s.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, early 20th century. So she actually considered hiring gardeners to change the landscape. She says she saw the premonition of Dolly Madison's ghost, who urged her not to change anything because she loved the rose garden. So.
Dolly Madison appeared and said, "I'll cut a bitch. Don't touch my garden."
That's exactly what happened, yeah. Except you say it a little bit more blunt than...
I don't think Dolly Madison would say cut a bitch, but you never know.
You never know.
Yeah.
So anyway, she knew that she had a connection to the spirit world, and she hired an astrologer. The lady's name was Madame Champney. Ooh. And she used to read her horoscope for her.
So this is full on Victorian era spiritualist era, correct?
This was actually the 1920s.
Okay, so it's
1920.
after the Victorian
a little
era.
bit after,
but
like
still
right after World War One.
Spiritualist era is still going on though at this point.
Definitely the spiritualist. Spiritualism was definitely strong back then. Yeah. So she had Madame Champney had a great reputation as a noted astrologer, and she also worked with First Lady Florence Harding. So even after Edith Wilson was out of the White House, and she was still feeling a connection to the spirit world, she still continued, and she said that in 1923 she felt a very dark presence around her, and that was the night of Warren Harding's death, and she woke up in the middle of the night by a newsboy who was actually shouting the announcement in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's amazing.
And anyway, we're going to get to Florence Harding. She was actually married to Warren Harding.
Okay.
And they used to actually read the horoscope in the every morning in the paper.
Together over breakfast.
Yeah, before
have coffee and read her horoscope.
They made it. They read the horoscope before she even made decisions about anything. She was raised in a very superstitious family, a German immigrant family, and they believed in. They had a lot of. They were a family who believed in the supernatural, and she was raised believing in that. So as an adult, she actually attended a spiritualist camp in Indiana to learn more about it, and she believed in bad omens so strongly that she would get angry at her maids if they moved anything around or messed around with the energy of the room.
Wow.
And
her feng shui. Put that back.
And she also did tarot readings, and she hired she also hired Madame Marcia Champney. I'm going to do a show about this Madame Champney to give her readings, and she would bring a crystal ball with her. And when Warren Harding was campaigning, she predicted that he would win, but that the stress of becoming the president would result in his death. And and of course the newspapers caught on and they laughed at her. So
what do they know?
Yeah, what do they know? So anyway, they had to kind of keep things a little bit secret so that they wouldn't look foolish.
Yeah.
So she gave Madame Champney the nickname Jupiter when they wrote letters to one another. And unfortunately, the press got a hold of one of the letters and
figured it out.
Yeah, and she decided to go ahead and just come out with it. And she was she admitted that she believed in astrology and the occult, and she just admitted that yes, she believed it, and no, she didn't care what people thought.
Yeah.
So anyway, after moving to the White House, Madame Champney continued to work with her, and she used to be snuck in secretly into the White House so that they can continue with their psychic readings without the public finding out.
So it sounds like hers was, and pretty much always was, her personal interest rather than let me see what's going to happen with my husband, let me see what's going to happen with the country. Hers was always a personal interest.
Always a personal interest, right. So one day she was warned that there would be a sudden death in her life. And in 1923, Warren Harding died, and he died in the middle of the night. And after his death, he was laid in a coffin with an American flag draped over it, of course.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Harding actually wanted to speak to her dead husband, and she asked that the coffin be opened so that she could have a conversation with the body. Which
that's not an uncommon request.
That's not an uncommon request.
You see people can everybody clear the room? I want to spend a few moments alone with my dead husband before we say goodbye.
And I can imagine how awful that was for her. Yeah.
Well, because didn't the psychic say it was a family member? It didn't really say who.
Right.
Until it happened.
Right. Now we're going to get to Eleanor Roosevelt, and I've heard this about Eleanor Roosevelt before. Mm-hmm. She actually came across another lady who came across Lincoln's ghost, and this was in the treaty room of the White House.
So this was during the Depression. Franklin Delano Roosevelt,
right.
and Eleanor Roosevelt during the Depression.
That's right, during the Depression, right. So she was in the treaty room, and it was next to Lincoln's bedroom, and she reported feeling something weird, like she was being watched. Mm-hmm. And she claimed that she felt somebody around her. But of course, she tried to, keep it quiet and just did her work. But other people claimed that they saw Lincoln's ghost in that same room. Yeah. And she obviously came to admit it later. But she actually had a lot of psychic experiences, but she was kind of quiet about it. She tried to keep quiet about it. And actually, it was Franklin who was open about it, who was more open than she was.
Isn't that interesting? The opposite, finally.
Mm-hmm. And there was a weekly radio show with a man named Joseph Dunninger. He was a famous mentalist, mm-hmm. and he claimed to be able to contact the spirit world. And President Roosevelt actually invited him to the White House so that he could perform some psychic mind reading for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like
Interesting.
another guy I wouldn't mind hearing more about.
Yep.
So apparently, Eleanor said that she felt uncomfortable with that whole experience, and she didn't like what Dunninger was revealing during the presentation, and she didn't want him to come back. But she did hire a palm reader named Nellie Meyer to visit her because she still believed she still believed in the paranormal, but she wanted to know her future. But I think she felt more comfortable with the lady
It's
as
funny.
a palm reader.
It sounds like Eleanor was more she was sort of interested, but she's the kind of person that's interested, but when they tell her too much, she doesn't want to hear about it. She doesn't want to hear about it, and then she's curious again. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Kind of a touch and go relationship with it.
Either that, or because of this guy, there was something about him that made her uncomfortable. But she hired somebody that she felt
Maybe a palm reader was safer for her.
It could be,
than
but
a psychic.
But it's still people giving information. I don't know. Only she knows why she was uncomfortable, but she wanted somebody else.
It's interesting, though.
Yeah.
That you would go,
or maybe she, yeah.
But you would get the information, not like it, and think, oh well, let me go get a palm reader.
Maybe she felt he was a sensationalist, and she didn't like the way he was.
Yeah, maybe he was playing it up too much, because sometimes psychics. Sometimes I've seen psychics that look like they're on the borderline edge of magician. You know what I mean?
From what I read about Eleanor Roosevelt, besides this, she seemed like she was a lady who was really into common sense.
Practical.
I liked her.
She seemed practical.
Very practical lady. I really liked her. So we're going to get to another lady, Jacqueline Kennedy.
Ooh, we know Jacqueline Kennedy.
And of course, I've actually
John F.
heard this
Kennedy.
before. Yeah. She actually never really made it extremely public, but she did go to the Lincoln bedroom just to sit and think about things. Mm-hmm. So apparently she felt that there was something about Lincoln's ghost that she felt comfortable with, because she felt like he was watching over her and President Kennedy.
Interesting.
And she said that she felt a great affinity and connection to Lincoln. So apparently she would go into the bedroom just to sit and feel comforted by him, but not necessarily consult with a psychic or anything.
Almost like a room that was meditation with wisdom that she could get comforted by.
Right. And she actually had her children pose for a picture with their costumes in the Lincoln bedroom for Halloween.
Interesting.
And there's
yeah.
And then
there's Lincoln in the background. No, just kidding.
Oh, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Ooh.
But she actually did do a form of divination called the I Ching.
Oh yeah, the I Ching.
Yeah,
okay.
I know all about the I Ching. Yeah, so, this is where the medium does ask a question, and the ghosts of death or your ancestors to help answer questions about the future, and you would toss coins, sticks, or other objects. And
I've heard about sticks where you have the wands, the I Ching wands, where you say whatever your question is or whatever you want to know in your head, and you cast them onto the ground, almost like casting runes.
I've seen somebody do it.
And however they fall is you have to read it as how your answer is.
Yeah, I actually have seen somebody do it. I've never done it for me, but I've seen other people do it for other people.
Yep.
And it's interesting how those readings are done and how accurate they are too.
Yep.
Yeah. And she also did rune stones. So
that's interesting.
So of course, rune stones are ancient symbols that are carved in a stone, and they were popular in the Germanic and Nordic countries, and with the Celts too.
Yep.
And apparently, she learned this from her ancestors, and of course, she would toss the stones, and then whatever order they land will deliver the message.
Yeah.
And of course, a lot of people today do read rune stones. I read them myself, and I think if you learn to read them and to know the symbols, I think they're very helpful in my opinion.
Yeah.
So anyway, the next one is
wait. So
what?
So Jacqueline Kennedy didn't really seek out psychics. She
didn't seek them out.
It. She was just very into.
She was very into it. She was comforted by Lincoln. She used his bedroom a lot to sit and think about things.
So she was interested and aware. She wasn't really seeking out anybody.
She wasn't seeking out anybody, but she
should
did.
have. God, she should have.
I think she should have
Look
too.
what happened.
I know. And apparently, and she used to do the I Ching and runestones, so apparently she had lot of belief in it. But
you got to wonder, though, did she ever cast the runes, and maybe she got an answer she didn't like, and it did happen? You never know. We'll never know now.
Right. So the next one is Margaret McCall Smith, which is known as Peggy Taylor. She was President Zachary Taylor's wife.
Who's Zachary Taylor?
He was the president in 1849 and the leader of the Mexican War.
Oh, so we're going back in time again?
We're going back in time again.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course, she enjoyed her marriage to him. He was a military man, but it was hard. It was a hard life for her because she was trying to give birth and raise small children.
Yeah.
And of course, she lost 2 children, and she raised her daughters, telling them never to marry a military man because she believed that it wouldn't end it well. So her daughter, whose name was Knox,
that's a pretty good guess all around.
She actually ended up marrying a military man named Lieutenant Jefferson Davis, and 3 months later, unfortunately, she died of malaria.
Ugh.
Which is awful.
Yikes.
Yuck. Does anybody even get malaria anymore?
I mean, there's so many vaccines. I'm sure they probably do in other third world countries. They probably still have malaria. Like South America, you probably still have areas that still have
No,
a
don't you get
problem.
them from mosquitoes?
Yeah, South America. So you would have mosquitoes, but not necessarily as much anymore.
Well, you want to hear
'Cause you have
something
vaccines.
strange?
Even down there, you have vaccines all over.
You wouldn't think in England, but Henry VIII had malaria.
Henry
Can you
VIII
believe
had
that?
a lot of problems.
I know, but I didn't think he would have. Why would he have malaria? I mean,
Well,
because
it's wet.
it's wet.
Mosquitoes. I mean, mosquitoes. As long as they have water, they can produce in.
Okay, because I was thinking in Europe it didn't seem as common as in a tropical country.
All
for
you got to
malaria.
do is have a mosquito bite someone that has malaria, and then travel and bite someone else, and usually they bite and die, don't they? I don't know
But
how they do
I
that.
haven't heard of any other European.
But remember, mosquitoes are vampires. They collect blood to feed
I know,
their young.
but
So whenever someone has a disease, if they collect the blood and feed their young, they're spreading malaria.
yeah, and he did travel because he traveled.
He hunted a lot.
He hunted a lot.
Yeah.
He traveled because he went to war. So
That was the least of his problems. Though.
that was the least of his problems. I just remember hearing about his infected leg.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. That was horrible.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Anyway, that's well, we can do another story on Tudor times later.
Yeah.
So-
Tudor times. I like
right.
it. Tudor time. That'll be our new show.
Tudor
title.
another show.
I like it.
Yeah, we're really me and Tony are into the Tudors and into the Plantagenets.
Yeah.
We really like to talk about them. Okay, so anyway, her husband Zachary Taylor, he ran for president of the United States, and she didn't like that, and she thought it wouldn't be a good idea. And of course, you know, he ignored her, and she was pissed off about it.
Woman.
And the family didn't listen to her either, and she just knew that it wouldn't be good for the family. She didn't want to be first lady, so she secluded herself from the staff by living upstairs in the White House.
Oh my God.
And her daughter, 25-year-old Betty Taylor, took over as first lady, saying that her mother was ill. So there's not a whole lot of
Can you imagine?
documentation about Mrs. Taylor.
Can you imagine? Well, obviously, if she's living upstairs in a recluse and refuses to participate.
And she destroyed her letters too.
Can you imagine anyone? No one would get away with it now as first lady. They expect too much of the first lady now.
They do. Well, she told her friends that she hated the fact that Zachary became president, and she knew it was not going to be good for him. It was going to be stressful. It was going to cut his life short. But she also believed that there were people out to get her husband, and she could feel that that something was going to happen to him, and she was suspicious of almost everyone.
Yeah.
She didn't trust anybody, and this feeling of nonstop dread was hanging over them. And after being president for 16 months, he actually did die, but it was from a stomach disorder, and it happened in 1850.
Was it after he was president or during?
After.
Oh, so the president? Well, that could have been caused probably from an ulcer.
Yeah, could have been.
So she's right.
Yeah.
It probably ended up killing him. That's too bad.
Yeah. So anyway, it was awful for her. She was in grief.
I wonder if she ever saw a ghost while she was a recluse upstairs.
Well, she said she could see a spirit leaving his body so quickly. That's what she.
But I mean, in the
she
White
witnessed
House, when
that.
she was a recluse in the White House, if she ever saw anything.
She
knows?
she didn't say.
Wow, she saw his spirit leave his body. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
And she had the staff preserve his body in ice for several days before she allowed an undertaker to treat him. Because she was convinced that he was going to wake up.
Oh, she must have had some issues then, because I'm sure a doctor would have said, he's dead, lady. He's not waking up.
Well, also when you're in grief...
you're out of your mind.
You're out of your mind. Yeah, when you're in grief...
Yeah, faculties. Out of your faculties.
When you're in grief, you think in a way that you don't normally think when you're not in grief. So, I think...
on ice for a few days.
I know, that's...
I mean, they did put Lincoln on ice.
Yeah.
But remember why? Is they toured different cities in Illinois, Chicago.
And didn't a train take his body different places
But they laid him out so the public could come and view him.
Right.
So he was on ice for a reason. This is just, he's on ice because I think he's going to wake up.
That doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
And when she said she saw him, the spirit leave his body, was she delirious by this point because she's been hoping it for so long?
No, she just witnessed it.
That's what I'm saying, though.
Yeah.
If she's been delirious for a few days and he's on ice and she's waiting.
No, she saw his spirit leave his body when he died.
That's what I mean, though.
Right before the ice.
Oh, before the ice.
It was before the ice, yeah.
Weird.
Yeah.
So then she knew. She knew he was out of his body. Why did you put him on ice?
Exactly.
What, are you going to serve him up in a drink?
I've heard people who work in a hospice seen spirits leave their body, too.
Exactly, and it happens quick.
Yeah.
But to put him on ice after that, what are you waiting for? I don't understand.
Like I said, when somebody's in grief.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Now the next person we're going to talk about is Nancy Reagan, and I knew about this for a long time.
Yeah.
I've known about this. She used to have an astrologer come visit her. Her name was Joan Quigley, and that's somebody who I actually want to do a show about because. They paid her $3,000 a month for her ability to do horoscopes for them.
Was she on the payroll? She must have been on the payroll.
$3,000 a month.
She was on the payroll.
Now think about this. Back in 1981, $3,000 a month was a lot of money.
It's like,
how much would that be today?
I was going to say $3,000 a month. That's at least double, 2.5 times at least, right? So we're talking $7,000 a month.
Yeah.
Was this on the payroll?
I don't know. They just
was the taxpayer.
It must have been. They paid her $3,000 a month for her to come.
Wow.
For spiritual guidance and to do the horoscopes.
I just can't see Ronnie. Like, okay, Nancy, could you bring that?
But he did.
Back?
Oh no, Ronnie was into it, and and anyway, she insisted that every important announcement, which were meetings and the date of Reagan's cancer surgery in 1985, believed that they should only take action if the stars said it would be a success.
Interesting.
So she called Joan Quigley. Joan Quigley actually lived in San Francisco here. She lived here in San Francisco. Oh. She called her 2 or 3 times a day, and it was so frequent that Ronald Reagan arranged for his wife to have a private phone line for at the White House in Camp David for those phone calls.
Psychic phone line.
2 or 3 times a day.
Oh my God.
It's like, really? Okay. I'm sorry.
It's amazing. You never would have thought someone would have a private phone line just to talk to their psychic.
Okay, I understand if you rely on somebody to be a personal consultant.
Yeah.
But 2 or 3 times a day
that's a little much.
I'm sorry, that's too much.
Most psychics,
I don't care how good they are.
Honestly, most reputable psychics would not want to talk to clients 2 or 3 times
a day.
They know that at that point you're just calling just because you can't deal with your own problems, and then you want me to tell you everything. You know what I mean?
Right.
Tell me. You want me to tell you what you want you to hear.
I'm surprised Joan didn't. Well, Joan was getting paid for it, but
she's getting paid well for it.
But I think Joan
we should do a show about her because she's local, right?
I want to do a show about her. I've been thinking about that, but she should have put the kibosh on that and said no. Yeah,
that's like anybody I know who does tarot readings, same thing. They don't want a client. You shouldn't have to have a client come to you that often. That means you're becoming too reliant.
You're becoming too reliant, and you have to work with the advice that's given you.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, Joan Quigley, remember this was the Cold War.
Yeah.
She said that she was also a consultant for Mikhail Gorbachev, and she said that he was a nice man and smart, and he wasn't the evil man that he was supposedly everybody thought he was.
But Reagan was so anti-Gorbachev. It's funny that she was seeking out both.
I know.
Two-timing.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, publicly they wouldn't know, but behind the scenes, that's kind of wild if you think about it.
Well, after Joan Quigley did meet Gorbachev, she persuaded the Reagans to make peace with him during one of her readings.
That's interesting.
And this was obviously because she liked him, and she thought that it would actually help. And I think actually they did make friends with the Gorbachevs later.
That's an interesting that she kind of brought that together.
You know, I remember seeing Gorbachev and his wife, and they didn't seem like evil people.
No, it's not like Putin, not like today.
Oh, not like today, no. But anyway, Nancy got a lot of criticism for being into those readings and for consulting Joan Quigley and you know, and they think that Joan Quigley was the one who really controlled that White House rather than Nancy.
I don't know about that.
Yeah. You know, she controlled the decisions in the White House.
Not that I have that much affection for Nancy Reagan or
I liked her.
Reagan,
I thought she was a smart lady.
But as a first lady, she was a strong first lady.
She really was.
There's no denying
she had a strong presence about her.
So I'll give her that.
Yeah.
She was very strong, and she knew her war on drugs. People made fun of it, but you know what? They know exactly whose campaign it was, don't they?
They do. And you know what's really interesting about Nancy Reagan? I was doing modeling, and I used to get my hair done by a professional hairdresser and makeup artist. Mm-hmm. And every time we brought up Nancy Reagan, he would tell me, he says, Verna, he said, whoever does Nancy Reagan's hair does a great job.
Okay.
I just thought that was funny because nobody ever talked about her hair.
Yeah.
But she was very conservative looking, but he would always tell me, remember, whoever does her hair does a great job. And I would be like, okay, cool.
That's interesting. Yeah. It's funny who all these people behind the scenes we don't know about.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. So I thought she was in my opinion, she was a very strong, very present first lady.
Yeah.
But wow.
I would love to sit down and it's too bad I can't now, but wouldn't it be great to sit down and talk to her about all the psychics, the experiences?
I would have told Nancy, you don't have to call Joan that much. You're a smart lady. Work with the advice. Just cool it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I would tell her to cool
Only
it.
reach out if you have something really pressing.
Yeah. But anyway.
But maybe she enjoyed her friendship. Maybe that's why she did.
Well, it could have been for friendship, not just because she wanted the readings all the time. Now we're going to get to another first lady, Hillary Clinton, and I knew Hillary Clinton was into the spiritual stuff. Mm-hmm. I knew she was.
You mean she's not a devil worshiper and a baby eater?
Hillary Clinton got far from it. I think she actually cares about children. Wasn't she the one who said about raising a village?
Yeah, raising a village.
Yeah.
Takes a village.
Takes a village, yeah. Raising a village takes a village.
That's a whole different.
I got that one wrong, didn't I?
That's a big responsibility to raise
a village. No, it takes a village. I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, she said that she actually would talk to the ghost of Eleanor Roosevelt.
Okay.
And she asked for guidance on how to behave as first lady. And she studied the behavior of first ladies too.
Now I got to stop you there. You probably don't know the answer because it's probably not there. But I would be like, wait a minute, Hillary, you talked to the ghost of Eleanor. Does that mean you've seen Eleanor in the White House? You know she's there. Do you know what I mean?
I think she just believed that her spirit would help her.
Or she just looks up to her.
I think she looked up to her and she believed her spirit would help her. And of course, people made jokes about it and laughed about her communicating with ghosts. But actually, I thought she was a smart lady to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and also during a speech in 2016, President Clinton addressed the incident. He said, all of you, he said, my wife, now Secretary of State, was known to commune with Eleanor on a regular basis. And people laughed about it, but they didn't know whether it was a joke or if he was serious. And he says, she called me last night all the way home from Peru to remind me to say that. And he says she spoke with Eleanor, who reminded her to say that. So apparently...
that doesn't sound like a joke. If your wife calls you from Peru to tell you to remind you to say that, that's not a joke then.
It's not a joke. Well, I didn't think it was a joke.
Whether the public received it as a joke is probably what they mean.
Right, because people didn't think about that. But she But she probably believed she was in touch with her ghost and
Yeah.
that she was getting guidance. And
Yep.
I don't find anything to laugh about that.
Nope.
I like Eleanor, and
Eleanor's like, Hillary, don't wear that. Wear that one.
why not? She also believed in what's going on with the UFO activity. In 2016,
Yeah.
she offered to expose some of the government secrets about the UFO activity.
Yeah.
And when she was running for president, she stated that she would push for the public to have more information about UFOs that the FBI had been keeping secret.
Do you remember when that happened? I do. There was a big push
Yes,
for it.
I remember
and all
that.
of a sudden it stopped.
All of a sudden it stopped, right.
No more pressing and just stopped.
Right, and they asked her if she actually believes in that, and she said she doesn't know, but she wants to see more information because it's being...
See, that tells me like they showed them something and said, this is why we can't tell anyone.
Right.
You need to stop pressing.
Right, and she said that she also doesn't believe that everybody's making things up.
Yeah.
So anyway, I've seen her actually read some books in her hand that talks about
UFOs?
No, there was one book that talked about the Spirit of America that she was reading. I saw a picture of her and I thought, oh, and she was running for president at that time, and I thought, oh, that's really cool. She really cares about the spiritual side of the country, and she's not just looking at things from a material point of view.
Yeah.
Because I do believe that every country has a soul.
Well, yeah,
every nation does.
Absolutely. That's exactly what she probably was reading it for.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the first ladies that I know about so far, and that's
a lot. I mean,
that's a lot.
That's just the ones that we have information about. All the ones way back we don't.
There could be more.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to read bios of some of the presidents to see if they mention any of that stuff in it.
And if they haven't, and if there's and recently, if they haven't mentioned it yet, they may mention it later.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
Yeah, I've always wondered if Jill Biden actually believes in all of that.
I don't know. I haven't heard anything about her. And Melania, I would say no.
No, actually, Melania, I heard she does.
She seems like she would be superstitious.
Yeah, Melania, I heard she does because of her...
because of where she comes from.
Because of where she comes from, some of the superstition and the folklore, where she comes from, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, folks. There you go. There's a different kind of. We've done episodes about the haunted White House. We've said presidents seeking psychics and stuff, and now we did the flip side of the first ladies. So we've pretty much covered all of the White House presidential stories.
Maybe
we might find more later. You never know.
Yeah.
All right. So until next week, folks, we'll say goodbye.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Royalty-free, copyright-free music by Kevin MacLeod and Ross Bugden. Be sure to visit us at www.ectoportal.com. Check out our archives on YouTube and head on over for new episodes to ectoportal.podbean.com.